Finally, watching a classic after reading and hearing about it for so many years offers a different perspective from those that have lived and loved the film for their entire lives. It's an informed perspective that brings prior knowledge and cultural awareness. Does this film live up to its status? Does it live up to the hype? Our guest today on the Cinema Shame podcast is Will McKinley, a writer for Sony's getTV network and self-proclaimed Old Movie Weirdo. You can view his many excellent words on film and TV at his website, Cinematically Insane. At the request of Will McKinley, I've removed all fluff from his introduction. So here we go. Will's a dude. He says stuff. Welcome to Cinema Shame, the podcast. Actually discussed Police Academy in Twitter not too long ago. And
wait, hold on. Are we doing? Is this the show now?
There's no beginning or end.
Oh wait, I thought you're gonna be like you're gonna introduce me or make some kind of special.
I recorded that already. I did that. So here's the way it's gonna work. Do you need a
wait?
Blah, blah,
this
blah?
is the show. Hold on.
Oh, it's the show.
The show is happening now.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, okay.
It's free
I've got my cat here. I was going to get rid of my cat, but I guess the cat's going to be...
The cat's good. Mine's around here somewhere. He's kind of an asshole.
If the cat is in the show, I apologize to the listeners for the cat.
I'll make sure to give him credit. It's fine.
The cat is a black and white cat, which, for a classic film fan is necessary.
Well, mine's gray and white, too.
All right.
Yeah. Anyway, so I introduced you already.
Great, and how did that go?
I thought it went well. I tested out some new software, and it recorded it, and it's there. And then I played the Police Academy theme out of that.
Oh my goodness!
Right.
Remind me again the name of this show.
This is Cinema Shame. Pause. Okay. The podcast.
Great. And I'm the one who is experiencing the shame.
You're now technically the penitent.
Okay. So all right, so the cinema shame is the shame on me or the guest, in this case me,
right,
because I have not seen a movie, right?
Well, the shame takes all sorts of forms because it's movies that you felt guilt for not having watched for many years, movies that friends have told you to watch, movies that are referenced frequently that, it just goes over your head, the movies that you're in conversation and you pretend to have seen, or that you've forgotten completely and still pretend to have seen.
All right, so this is a good malleable concept you have here. I like this. It's good.
Right. So it doesn't have to be a classic film. I mean, Citizen Kane could be your shame. There's a lot of people that have picked that for their lists, but it could also be like you're a huge fan of Quentin Tarantino and you haven't seen Jackie Brown, so you toss that on the list. Like it's anything that you feel like you should have seen and you just need a kick in the ass to watch.
All right, I'm in the right headspace now.
Okay, good.
So hit me, babe. Do I call you Jay? Is that, or do you go by James?
It depends on how serious I'm feeling at that time.
Okay, I'm going to go with Jay because it's less syllables.
Well, it's Police Academy too. I don't feel like we have to be too formal for
I agree.
Academy. Right.
Okay. All right, here's the show. Here we go.
Right.
Show.
So as I was saying, I came to you expecting to have this juicy nugget of the one classic film that you regret not watching.
Right.
And instead you dished it back to me with Police Academy. Number one, I expect because you knew I couldn't resist Police Academy.
I do. And for folks at home, for the home listener, Jay and I go way back many years at the TCM Classic Film Festival, where we'll sort of engage in banter, like, live face-to-face banter, unlike this where we're recording in two separate places. We're not currently in the same place, which I hate to, blow the, illusion of this show. But so on the rare occasions we get together, I will sometimes playfully mock Jay for what I feel is his greater interest in contemporary classics than some of the more hardcore of the old movie weirdo type people. Mm-hmm. And it's done with love and affection, but it's I think it's something that makes you a little bit different, a little bit, unique from the people who are like, movies don't exist after 1967, or in some cases 1959, or in some cases even earlier.
That's one of the things that I was most surprised about at the Classic Film Festival my first time, was that there were people that movies were dead to them after 1970. And
what it is? It's not. And I understand this, because we always have the debate, what's classic, right. what's the ceiling, what's the end of it. And everybody has a different answer, and every answer usually has a good theory behind it. And I personally, my personal feeling is that in order for something to be considered classic, it's got to be at least 20 years old. But I think what is the sort of the line of demarcation for most classic film fans is the institution of the MPAA rating system. Mm-hmm. When movies could start being dirty or frank or realistic or have nudity or show language, or have language, and I'm talking about studio films now, not the sort of rare imports that began to show up, in the 50s in art houses in major cities. I'm talking about when the dream factories, the Hollywood studios as we had known them for decades and decades, started making this different type of film. I think that's when you lose a good portion of the hardcore classic film fans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And at the film festival, too, it's useful to note for this particular podcast, and the way this conversation probably got started was when I was expressing enthusiasm for films in the 80s, and I'd get these sideways glances, and it's like, well, why would you do that?
Yeah, and not to go too far down this rabbit hole of a tangent, but I have frequently defended online, the hardcore old movie weirdos for their both their preference for older films and their lack of embrace of more contemporary films. And it really gets down to, we have so few venues for this rare thing, this unusual thing that we like, and you look at the numbers on TCM, and the vast majority of the stuff they're showing is from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. But every time they show a movie from the 80s, that's one less film from the 40s that we can see. And TCM is essentially the only place that shows these films. So, you show Room with a View, two or three times in a couple months, and that's two or three less old movies we can see. So I don't think it's, for most of us, I don't think it's we don't acknowledge the quality of, stuff, say, from the 80s. I think we just prefer the older stuff and want to see more of that. And I mean, that's and I like contemporary stuff. I like old stuff. I, watch plenty of contemporary television, and, I try to be, sort of like, diverse in my watching habits, but in the heart, right? In my heart, it's like you could say you could only watch movies from the 30s from the rest of your life. And I would be like, okay, that's fine.
And in our discussions, I came to realize that you are a huge fan of contemporary films, and you have this intense knowledge from these classic films. And there's a small window that seems to pop up from the 80s that you were never involved. And I kind of think of you as this friend I had in college. He was from Hong Kong, and he came to the United States in the mid-90s. So we'd play Trivial Pursuit or Pictionary, and his answer when he didn't understand something was, I wasn't here in the 80s. So, like, his pop culture knowledge for these films in the 80s, we'd all talk about them. I mean, these are the films we grew up on. So he was like, I wasn't here in the 80s. And he'd just kind of walk away from the table. Not saying you're walking away from the table, but...
You know what? It's very, did you study psychology in college? Because you have hit on something that I have never written about. I've never talked about. I've certainly not ever even specifically talked to you about it, but, the 80s, or at least a portion of the 80s is essentially like a cultural black hole for me. And, I'm 47. I was in high school in the, early to mid 80s. And I essentially opted out of my teen years. So a lot of the stuff, not just Police Academy, a lot of the stuff that a guy my age, and you're younger than me, right? By a couple of years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He's not going to tell us, folks, how old. That's right. It's cool. Anyway, I'm older. I admitted. I went on the record.
38.
Look at you.
Yeah.
You're like a baby.
I know.
A child. But so, and I'm not going to get too heavy because folks are listening to this probably because they think it's going to be funny. But I got to high school and I was in an all boys Catholic high school, and I was so mortified by the whole experience that I essentially checked out. It's like, have you ever seen movies where somebody sends their astral projection to another place and their physical body stays in that sort of place where it was? Mm-hmm. That was me for 4 years of high school. My body was in that school, and I functioned to the extent that I needed to, but I did not do anything. I had no friends my own age. I didn't do anything socially with any single classmate in 4 years of high school. And I don't say this so you can be like, oh, Will, do you need a hug? I'll be your friend. No, I say this to establish why I haven't seen a movie like Police Academy, because I was a high school student when it came out. I should have been there. Well, I'm not going to say I should have been. Others would have been, right, in that theater with their buddies, maybe high beforehand or drinking a beer or whatever, yucking it up. And that was not my high school experience. What I ended up doing in high school was very fun and very valid and, maybe a topic for another, conversation, but it wasn't the typical high school experience. So I'm in that way exactly like your friend from Hong Kong, except I wasn't in Hong Kong.
Right. I mean, maybe that's where your astral projection was. I mean, there could be some similarities there.
I could have projected myself to Hong Kong, but I think you would need the I Ching wands for that, and I don't think I had the wands.
Okay.
But so does that? Because I know you sent me this outline of what we're going to talk about, and you're you said what factors contributed to this movie not being watched, and that is exactly the factor. And you hit upon it without even asking me the question, and that's That's brilliant. If I can say that, can I say that?
You can say that. I'm not going to stop you. And when I was looking up the police academy information to then dispense back as like, here's some wonderful facts that you may not have known about police academy. And we're talking about, how it would have been an event for kids your age. And I didn't realize this, but it was the 6th highest grossing film in 1984.
Yeah. I mean, it was, it was a phenomenon there are movies that, capture the zeitgeist or whatever you want to say. And Police Academy certainly was one of them. There were others like, I don't know, Top Gun probably would be one of them. And of course, like the stuff that was earlier than that, I was right there with it, I saw Star Wars in 1977 in the theater 6 times. I saw Empire, Jedi, Star Trek, Superman 2, I'm trying to like build up my cred here. Like I'm a real actual movie person. But it was just those like 4 years in the kind of like, mid 80s ish where I kind of fell off the map. And then I went to college and started dating and I was right back in the game, like movies couple times a week, so talk to me about like late 80s, early 90s. I'm all over that shit. I could talk about Doc Hollywood, I don't know what else in the 90s. Name it.
Out in a Limb.
Flatliners. Anyway, it's just that sort of like little window of this black hole for me,
And, the other thing that I found interesting was that Police Academy was number 1 at the box office for 5 of its first 6 weeks in release. And you think about how the nature of our box office, the way that the money funnels through, and it's 2 weeks maybe and you're done. But in 1984, Police Academy had this long period where it was a fixture. And I'm coming from this, and I didn't see Police Academy in the theater. I was a little bit too young to convince my parents to take me at that point. But it was the event when these movies came out at the movie rental place, because I could walk in there and rent whatever I wanted.
So you're still in the... You're still in the VHS rental age.
Oh yeah. The release of the next Police Academy sequel I remember as being a big deal, but I had very little experience in the theater with them.
Right.
I didn't see one in the theater until I guess it was Police Academy 4.
So you said to me, well, all right, we'll get to that. You keep going.
But the only film that broke it off in the middle was Friday the 13th. And that was the 1 week thing and then disappeared again. This phenomenon of Police Academy actually surprised me, who and I've been a Police Academy fan for, really as long as I can remember. I do not know why my parents gave me Police Academy. It's like, yeah, you should watch this at like 8, but Police Academy, Steve Guttenberg, like these are fixtures throughout my childhood. And so, as I said, the success of that film had surprised me. So when we decided on doing the Police Academy, I thought it was a great way to get into why something like that would have success and how that looks now. Like the movie itself appeals to someone who wasn't in that moment.
Yeah, I'll talk from the business standpoint, obviously, and this as being a media person. There's the nature of the theatrical experience and the theatrical window is far different in 2017 than it was in 1984. nowadays, a movie will have a good opening weekend, maybe 2, and then that's sort of with rare exceptions, that's kind of the extent of it. And it was not that way in the 80s. It was, people seemed, to me at least, I have no facts to back this up, but we saw movies more, we saw them, we viewed them more. And I think that had a lot to do with the fact that we knew that the experience of seeing this film, looking its best.
It was certainly finite.
Was finite, yeah. And now, I mean, it's like there are people who never go to the movies and they're movie lovers, and that's because their home system is so tricked out that they can have a great theatrical experience at home for a lot cheaper, and it's different now. I mean, it's very, very different.
It's still hard to stomach for people who are devoted to the theatrical experience too. Like people say, well, I don't go to the movies, and like, well, how can you not want to experience that? And
yeah, you know what? I used to feel exactly the way you do, and I've passed the line. I could see not going to contemporary movie theaters anymore. I can see that future. I still love the experience of seeing old movies with big crowds. It's my greatest 10, 20 more, movie-going experiences are that. But I don't know, the experience of going to see contemporary films is like, the Oscars were recently, and I basically binged all of them in a week. And yeah, I saw, all but 2 of them in theaters, and I paid my coin, to sit there in the seats. But I don't know, I didn't feel, and I don't anymore feel, this great need to experience contemporary film in theaters. And frankly, I don't think that, the next generation understands, wait, I can see something at home for free, or I have to go pay $16 and maybe get a seat that's good and maybe deal with people that are annoying. I don't know that they see the value proposition. And that may be, I'm sure a lot of us feel like that's a very bad and unfortunate thing.
Yeah, I'm not so far away from you there either with contemporary films. There are a few that I consider an event anymore, but I'm completely in agreement. The classic film experience is an entirely different animal than viewing contemporary film, because when you're signing up for a classic film in the theater, you're already assigned to a crowd that is more invested in the experience.
Yep, totally. And if you're really lucky and you live in a major city where you have, 35 millimeter projection available, that's just a radically different experience. And people are like, oh, nobody cares. Nobody can notice. Watching a print that has, imperfections, is essentially a unifying experience. It unites you with every person that has watched that physical print, right? In years or sometimes decades, it's like I saw a really beaten up kind of grindhousey print of The Great Silence, the spaghetti western, with the guy from Django. What's his name? Franco Nero,
yeah.
Yeah. And this print was like, it looked like it had been dragged from the back of somebody's pickup, like over rocky terrain, right? It was just a mess. And it had like Swedish subtitles as well as English. It was just a total mess. And it so enhanced the viewing experience for me, because I was like, oh my God, who else has seen this same very print? Like, for a second, I was in like a Times Square theater in like 1976, without the like sticky floor and the guy in the raincoat. And it was just, you don't get that from a DCP in a, contemporary sort of boxy multiplex at the end of your, mall. It's just not the same,
Yep. All right. Now, when I went to search for anecdotes to direct our conversation about Police Academy, I went to some contemporary reviews to find an opinion that would spark something. And I don't like reverting to Roger Ebert necessarily. Anyway.
He's dead, right?
Well, All
right.
He's not really dead, though, right? I mean, Roger Ebert is as alive now. I mean, the website and everything is like a machine.
He's alive in all of our hearts, except
right.
You, apparently.
I was always a Siskel fan.
Yeah, I was a huge, Siskel and Ebert, that show, first on PBS and then the syndicated show. Yeah. I was 10 years old and I was like, oh my God, I got it. This was the best show ever. It was so part of my formative experience as a movie.
Yeah, they were the reason I started writing about film when I was in high school. I would often boo Roger Ebert from my couch and cheer Siskel. I was all in there. Anyway, the Roger Ebert review for Police Academy is one of his infamous 0-star reviews. And he mentioned something in that first paragraph of his review that I thought was pretty interesting. I'm going to read that first paragraph, and then we'll take a quick break, and we'll start talking about the movie itself. Okay. Here's Roger Ebert. It's really something. It's so bad, maybe you should pool your money and draw straws and send one of the guys off to rent it so that in the future, whenever you think you're sitting through a bad comedy, he could shake his head and chuckle tolerantly and explain that you don't have any idea what bad is. This is the kind of movie where they'll bring a couple of characters on screen and begin to set up a joke, and then just when you realize you can predict exactly what's going to happen, not only doesn't it happen, but nothing happens. They just cut to some different characters! ! If there's anything worse than a punchline that doesn't work, it's a movie that doesn't even bother to put the punchlines in.
It sounds like he didn't like it.
I mean, it goes on from there. It's actually quite a long review for him. He had a lot of things to say about Police Academy.
I bet he did.
But there was something I want to take away from that review. We're going to take a break, play some more Police Academy tunes, I believe I have, and we'll come back.
Wait, what do I do during a break?
Nothing. I'm just doing it to switch my notes around and put some more music in the podcast.
Okay.
All right, so we'll just jump right back in, and I'm going to ask you, what were your expectations for Police Academy? Having, the movie is now 33 years old, and you've heard of Police Academy, I presume.
No, I've never heard of it. Never. I mean, I should set up that until this week, I had never seen 1 minute of any iteration of the Police Academy franchise. I'm not quite sure how I've managed to do that, but I haven't seen any of the 7 movies. I didn't see the cartoon. I didn't see the live action show. I don't know. There has to have been a video game. I mean, I didn't play that. Board games, Halloween, I'm nothing. I have no experience of this franchise whatsoever.
I could see you dressing up as Tackleberry for Halloween. I mean, I really feel like there's some promise there.
Well, it's never too late. It's never too late. But so my expectations were Jay, I feel like I'm gonna hurt you.
No, you can't hurt me. Because
I didn't pick this movie knowing that you were gonna like have wistful memories of being an 8-year-old seeing boobies for the first time.
That's the thing. There are certain types of nostalgia that cannot be hurt because you know that it's not good, right? You've viewed it since, and while you enjoy the experience, you're watching this, and this movie, it's not good. Okay. It doesn't, and there, you come to realize that, I actually enjoyed Police Academy 6 when I first watched it. And you always have that experience. And you can talk glowingly about it and reminisce.
My expectations, so my intellectual expectation is that there has to be something good about this, because you cannot have launched this. Like, what did it make theatrically? $82 million.
The first movie made $82 million, and
when you adjust, by the way, because I'm obsessive compulsive, when you adjust this for inflation, that's somewhere like around 160 or $70 million,
and that's crazy.
I mean, that's like Star Wars type numbers.
And this is an R-rated comedy, which
for an R-rated comedy
doesn't happen.
Which you've already lost like a good portion of your comedy audience there. So my expectation was that there's got to be something special, about this for it to have captured the zeitgeist to the extent that it did and endured to the extent that it has. That's my expectation.
Okay. And then the next obvious question is: Did you find anything?
I found it completely without merit. Everything that Roger Ebert said, like I would square that. Like Roger Ebert squared, this movie is terrible. Mm-hmm. I mean, here's what I wrote down in my notes. I wrote down these, and I feel bad. If you need a hug afterwards, we can hug.
As I said, you can't say anything.
All right. Here's the words I wrote down: lazy, witless, missed opportunities, pulled punches, and my personal favorite, gay panic.
Gay panic, yes.
There is so much gay panic, and look, I mean, it's like I will go down with the ship, arguing with people that they have to watch classic film in its proper historical context. So they have to be mindful of that. It's like you can't go into old movies and be like, yeah, but there's gender inequality, and there's race inequality. Well, no fucking kidding. That's the way this country was. It's like, and the art reflects the culture, and it reflects what's good about the culture and what's bad about the culture. So I remember the 80s. I remember, we talked differently and thought differently. And so I don't judge the movie for that, kind of. But then again, I sort of do, because, it's within my lifetime. It's within your lifetime. It's a movie that's still kind of presented to audiences as and maybe you tell me if I'm wrong about this, kind of our sort of time. I feel like even though we now think of 80s movies as kind of classic, they sort of kind of fall in this sort of vague, relatively recent category, right? Or am I wrong about that?
No, I can't disagree with that. They are definitely fall into the more contemporary. If you want to just start drawing lines, I feel like that even. But unto the 80s though, there's a bandwidth that this R-rated comedy phenomenon as well was something that was almost entirely of the 80s.
Yes. And I mean, although I guess you could argue, and I mean, we could, again, you and I could probably do 5 hours on this, sort of whatever, this kind of era and these types of films. But you could kind of argue that it started like, with, Animal House and, like whatever, that sort of period of time, Animal House, Blues Brothers, 1941, that's sort of like the R-rated Stripes, Caddyshack, whatever. I can go on and on and on.
Right. Nudity for nudity's sake, like there's no context.
And again, it's like, here's another thing that I wrote down. Hold on. Only in 80s movies do women randomly take off their tops for no reason. It's distracting. So I love nudity, like, is it in life? I enjoy it. It's a thing I enjoy, right? And I even love it when it's gratuitous. Like, the single best example, I think, of nudity ever in a film ever is Airplane. Mm-hmm. There's a scene in Airplane where everyone's like on the plane screaming, and all of a sudden a woman runs in front of the camera and like shakes her boobs and runs off. And that is perfect because it's winking at the camera.
Yep.
I mean, winking at the audience. It's, basically them saying, what's going on. We know what's going on. In this movie, what passes for, so they have a scene with the fake Spanish lover who's in bed with two girls, right?
Yep.
It does not occur to them that scene will sear itself into the brain of the 11-year-olds that are going to think this piece of shit is funny. Right? In the same way that Phoebe Cates undoing her bathing suit top in Fast Times at Ridgemont High is a watershed, and some other probably things were shed for people my age. This could have been that. Like, if he had put this guy in, if Hugh Wilson, the director, who, by the way, was the creator of WKRP in Cincinnati.
Absolutely.
And
I had that in my notes to get to as well.
Writer of Bob Newhart, so I don't know what the fuck happened to him when he made this movie. But anyway, like, he could have been like creative, fun, sexy use of nudity. Instead, we're at a party, at a bonfire, and all of a sudden women decide they're going to start running around. It's like it becomes like the Wicker Man for a second.
I think all these instances, I mean, there's a list of like dozens of movies that have this type of ridiculous, senseless nudity that's not winking, that's not of any shock value or serving comedic purposes. It is literally just there, and like I feel like everything stems from Porky's, and then it gets less interesting as the decade goes on until it wears itself out.
Right. And luckily they sort of, they finally got tired of it. I mean, you have, I think, set me up as, like a person whose heart lies in the classics. And, yes, so that is going to make me a little bit biased against the quote unquote, like, kind of sex comedy because, like my idea of comedy was formed by these movies that existed at a time where a punchline was not a curse, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, one of my big knocks against this movie is that, punchlines are not by their, punchlines are funnier when they are creative, thoughtful, witty, surprising. When they're just like a curse word, that is kind of lazy. I mean, and there's like perfect example. When Steve Guttenberg's character gets yelled in the ear with the bullhorn by G.W. Bailey's character, mm-hmm. He sort of like almost kind of breaks the fourth wall and kind of like looks off into the distance and is like, shit, I'm deaf. And I was like, oh my God, you have writers, like professional writers on this movie and that's the best you can do. You know, there's so many instances in this movie where, you know, an enunciated vulgarity stands in for a punchline. And I understand that if you were 11 or in your case 8 in 1984, that you probably thought that was the funniest thing you had ever seen in your life. But boy, looking at it now, it just looks like everything Ebert said. You know, it's like lazy, stupid, you know, pointless, not funny. You know, and it was, you know, another great example is like, what's his name? George Gaines's character's like Boss, the chief.
Oh yeah.
He does this little speech about Johnsons, and I was like, oh, I get it. They're going to make a pun like they had a lot of students with the name of Johnson. And no, he's just talking about penises.
Well, it's back in the old days. There were Johnsons as far as the eye could see. Oh, and what a lovely sight it was, if I'm misremembering it. I apologize. And then he fondles, like he puts his hand on his crotch in case you're too stupid to know. I was like, oh my God, this is the movie that spawned a like $250 million franchise or whatever. What the heck? It's just crazy. You know, and look, I'm not going to like, I understand that there's a, you know, sex comedy has definitely a place in the, you know, in the film and the classic film landscape. You know, it's, you know, I mean, I saw whatever, you know, there were movies that I saw that probably people would look at now and be like, oh, that's terrible, you know, and, you know, I have affection for them and love for them. You know, but objectively speaking, I found this movie frustrated, you know, because I saw it as a series of, you know, missed opportunities. It's like I did stand up for like 5 years. And, you know, one of the things that they teach you in stand up is like always get as many laughs as you can out of every single setup. Right. Because if you fully milk, you know, a setup, then, you know, you've gotten, instead of getting one laugh out of a punch, you've gotten 2 or 3 or 5, right? And then you go on to the next thing, and there's going to be a lull as you set up the next thing. So you want to get as many laughs as you can. There were so many instances, as Ebert said here, where you have a setup and either no punch at all or maybe one weak punch, you know? And I was looking at that being like, oh, they could have done this, they could have done this, they could have done this. You know, and gotten 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 laughs out of it instead of one or maybe even none. You know, and again, it's shocking to me that, you know, that an experienced comedy director like Hugh Wilson didn't sit there being like, you know what, guys, this punch falls a little bit flat, you know, let's do something more with this. Let's kind of, you know, like, and also, it's like a lot of times when you have a good, talented comedic actor, he or she can kind of bring that. You know where, ironically, the only one who brought that wasn't even in this movie. Because I'm a masochist, I watched Police Academy 2 also. I commend you.
And Bobcat Goldthwait can get a fucking laugh out of reading, you know, like a box of, you know, gummy bears. I mean, like, yes, his delivery eventually gets grating, but and I don't want to like jump ahead in case maybe you'll have me on again to talk about Police Academy 2, but, you know, like he's like, they go into the supermarket in Police Academy 2 and he says something like, let's go shopping or let's look for discounts. And
yeah, the let's look for discounts line. Yeah. That's what I said. Like with the Police Academy, wasn't ever my favorite because I was obsessed with Bobcat Goldthwait. And honestly, I think that's why I became like a fan of the series in the first place, was because I fixed on Police Academy 2 and 3 with Bobcat. Yeah, I mean, you have to, I don't know, maybe you look at him now and people are like, what the fuck was that? But
Can we say fuck on this show? Are you going to have to edit me?
I don't know. I don't edit. I don't edit fucks.
All right.
Shits. No, we're good.
Then we would fit right in Police Academy with its gratuitous cursing. Do I sound like an old man when I talk about gratuitous cursing? I swear to you, your audience is going to think, holy shit, he's like pushing fucking 50 years old. He must be like an old man. Jay, you've hung out with me in life. I am not, right? I'm youthful.
You are not the crotchety old fart that you come across in the Police Academy conversation.
All right, good. Yeah. Good. Oh, can I further prove how I am not that? Ask me what I think was the funniest scene how about I'm going to ask you what you think that I think was the funniest scene in Police Academy.
Oh, well, this is a good quiz.
Think about it.
Funniest scene. I mean, there's only we're talking about punchlines. The only joke that really gets the punchline is the podium blowjob.
Yes. Perfect answer. And that proves that I am not a prude, because I laughed at Punky Brewster's father getting a blowjob in a movie, and that's like a cultural thing for children of the 80s. I laughed at that. I laughed hard at that. And while I think they could have gotten even more laughs out of it, basically what sold that scene was George Gaines's performance.
Absolutely.
His line deliveries, everything about it, that is perfect comedy. And you may have some people, like a typical old movie would be like, it's a scene about a blowjob, thus it is invalid, right? I'm watching an old man get filleted in a movie, thus it is invalid, right? I don't think that. I think it's valid, right? And I think comedy, like, if it's funny, it's funny. It doesn't matter to me when, where, whom, why, whatever. And that was funny. And believe it or not, I've watched the movie 3 times because I want to give you a good podcast for your first show.
I do appreciate that very much.
I watched it once at the gym on my phone. I don't know if that counts as a full viewing, but even at the gym on the treadmill, I'm fucking like cracking up to Punky Brewster's father getting a blowjob, and people around me are looking like, what are you doing?
There's one line he says in that scene that gets me every time. He pauses and he's going through the slides and he says, let's look at this slide for a moment without commenting. I think it speaks for itself. And it's just like cars parked there. Like, that's the only thing that's on the slide. Like, there's nothing to it. And his delivery in that line is perfect.
So, I'm laughing, like, I'm convulsively laughing on just your reporting of that scene. So does that redeem the movie? You know what? It doesn't fully redeem it, but it makes me feel like, all right, I can see this. I can see what people, thought about this and why they liked it.
And we talked about this as a sex comedy, and definitely comes out of that genre, but it's like a half-hearted sex comedy. It's
exactly.
Not like, it doesn't really go for that. It's trying to be something broader. And when they're talking about the jokes that don't go anywhere and they don't have punchlines and the scenes that jump around, I was trying to come to terms with why, it's always been, it's that dumb Police Academy movie to a lot of people. And like, even I, who has this history with it, acknowledges that it's a terribly stupid movie. So why exactly did it capture the attention of so many people in 1984? And I do think part of that has to do with the fact that children, apparently our parents were phoning it in the 80s, and we could just see whatever we wanted. And it is this childlike representation of humor because you don't need to understand anything. There's very little wordplay. And what's on the screen is face value. The jokes like Michael Winslow's sound effects. Hightower is just big. Tackleberry is a gun nut. There are all these one-note characters that resonate with kids because there's no extra textual knowledge needed to understand what's happening. And at a narrative level, it's about a bunch of misfits who are rebelling against an overreaching institution, which is a theme that, it's time tested, kid approved. Like it's something that automatically has some resonance.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they made an R-rated comedy for kids, which is on its face absurd, but it obviously worked because they made a lot of money. Are we done talking about the blowjob scene?
We can go back. I just thought that the blowjob scene tied into this because it was, again, something that's the one joke that pays off, and it still doesn't require. But let's see. I understood the joke when I first saw it, so it's not something that's going to go over unless you're watching this when you're like 5, and that's
right. And you shouldn't be watching it for the home listeners. If you're 5 and listening to this, first of all, congratulations on being really smart and having good taste. If you're 5, but don't watch this movie because there's a blowjob scene in it, and you shouldn't see that at 5. I don't think. I know that we're like the world is different now, but still, I don't think it's appropriate.
Technically, there's 2 blowjob scenes because there's the repeat at the end
Ken, now thank you. All right, if I could have a time machine, and I could go back to when they shot this movie, I would pull Hugh Wilson aside and I would say, you have an opportunity to redeem this. Oops, sorry, that was my beep. You have an opportunity to redeem this terrible movie you have just made, and you have one way to do it. And that way is, in comedy, we call it a callback, right? You calling back the podium blowjob scene at the end. That's a great idea, but you've done it wrong. The way to do it would be, since he got tricked, since George Gaines's character, what's his name, Lassard?
Yeah, Commandant Lassard.
So Lassard got tricked by Gutenberg's character in the slide presentation. He should then turn the tables on Gutenberg's character at the end and not have Georgina Spelvin, the porn star, blowing him under the podium. He should have the leather daddy from the gay bar.
Oh, that would have been 2 callbacks. That would have been something.
That's a double callback, and that would have been, if you're going to, let's go all in on the gay panic. Like, gay people are scary, they're funny, they're all wearing leather, they're all whatever. Double down on the gay panic, and instead of ending on this sort of like, it's weird. It's like he's giving, maybe some people in our audience have had blowjobs in their life. They're generally pleasant, right? Yeah. I'm not asking you to be personal because maybe you don't want to be personal. I think
it's safe to say that that's the goal.
Objectively speaking, it's usually even a bad one is better than whatever, going to the dentist. Mm-hmm. So,
I think that's pretty much safe for a safe statement to make across the board. I don't think we're overreaching there.
I don't think so. And I think it would have been so much funnier. But that's an example of how this movie pulls punches. There were so many different scenes. It's the very first scene in the movie, Tackleberry inadvertently shooting his coworkers. If the Zucker brothers and Jim Abrams from Airplane had been directing Police Academy, all 4 or 5 of those people in that room would have fallen dead. Mm-hmm. And that would have been hilarious. As it is, it's cut abruptly, so you can't really tell if he's killed them or not. Right?
Oh, it's just like he shot the cake and the
coffee machine.
The coffee machine, and yeah.
But then the woman or the man, whoever it is, standing with the cake, drops the cake, but she does that on the cut, so you can't tell if she's doing that because she's dying. And So that's the first example of a scene that would have been a laugh out loud scene if they had just gone all in and made him having murdered 5 people. The next one is Harris, and I wrote these down because I'm a preparer. Harris getting stuck in the horse's ass. That could have been, oh my God, that could have been, they could have milked that for, a million more laughs.
Yeah, the only punchline there is here's your new hat.
I mean, that's like, it's like an 8-year-old wrote it named Jay, but
it's possible that was right up my alley.
Tackleberry shooting the old lady's cat in the tree. I mean, that like he could have basically sort of like, instead of pulling out his gun in frame, he could have like stepped out of frame and then you hear a gunshot, right? So you haven't seen the gun. Then you hear the gunshot. Then he steps back into frame and he hands her a stiff cat. That would have been great. It would have been gruesome, but funny, right? Witty. Right. The gay bar scene again, so many different things that they could have done there. They just sort of, it's like, oh, they're dancing and that's it. The gay bar scene really is just the song. It's El Bimbo. And that really is the joke. Yeah. I mean, that's even probably the one cultural reference to take away from this movie is the Blue Oyster Bar. Do you feel better now understanding Blue Oyster Bar jokes? I've never heard a Blue Oyster Bar joke.
Well, maybe now you will. It's like when you hear
I'll be like, oh, like, yeah.
Now I hear the Blue Oyster Bar jokes.
So, like, what's a Blue Oyster Bar joke? Like, give me an example.
Well, you can reference something like that. That's totally Blue Oyster Bar. Like somebody references a specific institution as a Blue Oyster Bar, meaning it's probably a gay bar.
Oh, all right, I get
it. It's somehow it's come up in our live tweets too, like Blue Oyster Bar. It just pops up in unexpected places. But it's the song is tied to that, and like I said, that's the one specific cultural reference I think from this movie that has endured.
I mean, it's amazing for a movie that is as well known as Police Academy is, and it's like maybe I don't know if this is the case with you, but like with guys my age, it's like you get a bunch of fucking like guys in their late 40s together, and if anybody has more than a couple beers, the conversation will eventually get to how great either Caddyshack is or Stripes or Trading Places, or honestly, and whatever, your listeners already probably think I'm a prude with no sense of humor, but honestly, like none of those movies are favorites of mine. Just the whole sort of like dirty comedy. I grew up watching, the Marx Brothers and Abbott and Costello and Three Stooges and Little Rascals and, whatever. I love Preston Sturges. That's not my idea of comedy. And they'll always quote like whatever, guys will always quote you something from one of those movies as like, it's a cultural touchstone we all share, and it's like it doesn't interest me. I don't think it's funny, but more importantly, I think is Police Academy lacks that. It doesn't have that one moment where everybody can say blank and they'll know you're talking about Police Academy. Maybe you said Blue Oyster Bar is it, but I don't recall ever having heard a Blue Oyster Bar reference.
Yeah, when I was watching it today, I was yesterday I was picking out moments that I thought you may have noticed, and I didn't actually come away with anything besides the Blue Oyster Bar. That there's really no lasting lines that seem to have grown from that movie. Like, I mean, you could do 20 different lines from Caddyshack when you're talking about people getting together, having 2 beers, and like Caddyshack and Animal House and these 80s comedies have specific omnipresent quotable lines that everybody knows, even if they've seen the movie or not. Like, you can recognize Caddyshack. And Police Academy, for how long it's lasted, is I don't even know what exactly it is, because it is a movie that people seem to joke about as like something nostalgic, but I don't know of anyone that can look at that objectively and say, you know, that really holds up today.
Right. And, you know, it's like, but that gets to the issue of, you know, why do things endure, right? Why do things endure? There are kind of two reasons. It's either quality or nostalgia. And, you know, the experience of, I mean, nostalgia is a multi-billion-dollar business. I mean, you know, that's why we're getting a new, you know, Full House and a new Gilmore Girls and a new Twin Peaks and a new SWAT and a new blah, 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 you know, name all the reboots. You know, nostalgia is a big business, but quality, there's a huge difference between enjoying something nostalgically and enjoying it because it's objectively, empirically good or well written or well shot or well produced or well acted. You know, and a great example for me, it's like I love all the classic TV, you know, sub channels, all the diginets like MeTV and getTV and you know, Cozy and Antenna and all that. But, you know, there are shows on those channels that you look at that were huge in their day, and they are literally unwatchable, completely without merit. And then you watch shows, you know, that were successful or moderately successful, and they're still just as great and just as resonant and just as funny today, you know, you know, obviously I prefer the stuff that endures because of quality, not because of nostalgia, you know?
Absolutely.
And, you know, but then again, you know, if there are people in the audience who are like, oh, I loved Police Academy when I was a kid, bless you. Great. You know, I have no judgment. You know, I liked shit that was not good, you know, when I was young, sometimes. And, it's okay.
You know, I think the nostalgia has kind of become a bad word in as much as that the culture feeds off of it. It's often used as a derogatory comment, as like a catch-all for, well, you know, it's nice that you enjoy that. And, you know, not every movie can obtain that status. You know, it's a certain time and a certain place, and I don't think it necessarily has to be this dirty word, but it's kind of been segregated in terms of film appreciation. It's like, well, you know, we can't, that's cute. That's nostalgia for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, in the classic film world, you know, you want to dismiss somebody as irrelevant. You know, there's one quick way to do that, and that is to, you know, to accuse them of only being interested in this stuff because of nostalgia. Mm-hmm. You know, and there are people online, you know, who have basically sort of dismissed the kind of, you know, like the classic film live tweeters on Twitter and the hardcores as being, you know, nostalgists, not film lovers. And, you know, I guess that, you know, it's a weird mix with, like, you know, love for classic film and television can make for odd bedfellows because, you know, you have some people that approach this from a scholarly perspective and some people, you know, who approach it entirely from a nostalgia perspective. And you see this a lot, like on Facebook classic TV groups, the people who are like, TV today is terrible with all the foul language, you know, and I'm like, you know what? Just don't even put that in public because you look like an idiot, right? It's like TV is better than it's ever been. And yeah, there's cursing, but also the quality of the writing and the production,
the freedom of creativity and all these other the money that's being put into it.
if you're going to tell me that Bonanza is better than, I don't know, Westworld or Orphan Black or name whatever, like, great, Mr. Robot, you're nuts. You're crazy. You're stupid. You're wrong. I'll watch an old show. I love old shows, but
we enjoy them for specifically different reasons.
Exactly. And, so yeah, like I believe in nostalgia and I believe in the quality and the importance of nostalgia, but when it's the only bullet in your gun, to use a police reference, right? Yeah. Then that's where you lose me. And that's why occasionally we get painted, and when I say we, I mean the like old movie weirdos, which I also include old TV in that because I think they're integral, right? They're tied together.
Yeah.
We get painted with this brush of nostalgia, and it's not fair. Sometimes it is, but more often than not, it is not. Myself and a lot of people I know look at this stuff with a scholarly, thoughtful, informed, historian style perspective. I'm not a historian. I maybe someday will be, but it's not just pure nostalgia. It's, there's theory behind it that goes far, far beyond nostalgia.
Right. And to go back to something you said earlier, we're talking about taking the film or the TV show in its context. During the Oscars, you had the black and white film comment that you jumped on from Charlize. Like comments like that segregate are automatically removing context as a value in criticism and appreciation. And I don't think that's even possible. And we're looking at a film like Police Academy, and you want to go back to the time and really try and see what the factors and the movies that formed this.
Right.
It didn't come from nowhere. And like one of the things I wanted to talk about earlier, but we got sidetracked, was that Police Academy was compared to the Zucker films that you mentioned. And those films are parodies. And so what's Police Academy parodying? Nothing. The jokes are coming from other movies, but they're not parodies of jokes. They're just their regurgitation and their obvious references, but there's nothing behind them. And that's probably the biggest reason why we look at Police Academy and like, well, there's very little going on here.
You know what? Again, that time machine that I mentioned before that I'm going to invent so I can go back and fix Police Academy.
Yeah.
The other thing I would have done is I would have said, give Kim Cattrall more screen time.
Absolutely, because every movie she's in from like 81 to about 88 is phenomenal. I
mean, and she is I don't like Sex and the City, but she is a star. She is just she is a movie star. And this movie, and again, it's like, I'm not going to like sit here and say, whatever, if Porky's had only had less nudity, it would have been better. Porky's is what it is, and it doubles down and triples down and quadruples down, and it doesn't apologize. And if you want a dumb, like, sex comedy with a lot of boobies, boy, Porky's will deliver, right?
Yeah.
But Police Academy is like trying to be this sort of like a little bit Porky's and sort of a little bit Zucker Brothers and sort of a little bit something else. And the one thing I just wish they had done, there's a scene, and I think it's like, I have it written down here somewhere. Okay, 39 minutes into the movie. There's a scene with Steve Guttenberg in Harris's office talking to Captain Reed on the telephone, and he looks out the window and he sees Kim Cattrall. And she shows off her costume, her whatever running suit. Like maybe she's wearing shorts and t-shirt. It's so charming and so touching. And I was like, oh my God, this movie could have been something. It could have been a screwball comedy. It could have been it didn't have to lose any of the like other stuff that it had.
It had all the actors, like the cast used correctly.
Yes, it had everything, but most importantly, it had these two attractive, in the case of Steve Guttenberg, maybe less talented than Kim Cattrall, but talented performers.
Guttenberg has this charm that existed in the 80s.
Yeah,
like it is. I'm not sure he is anything outside of that, but there's this smarmy innocence to Steve Guttenberg that is. I don't know. I want to watch Steve Guttenberg, even though I don't know why.
I agree. And if they had just been more confident of their audience, they could have given those two a little bit more of a love story. They could have given it a little bit more weight, a little bit more heft, and this movie would have had an emotional core, which is something that it entirely lacks. And the perfect example of a squandered opportunity on how they could have given this movie some sort of emotional core is when they're at the bonfire and she says, "You want to go for a walk?" They then cut to them like in mid-kiss. So like they haven't – there's an opportunity where they could have sort of felt each other out, kind of fumbled, been nervous, whatever. You know, it could have been a moment of emotional resonance for everybody watching. You know, this relatability that all great, you know, movies and TV shows have, that endure, that sustain. Like you feel like you can see yourself in the story or see a experience of your life or a portion of yourself. And no, they just cut it, right? They cut into the kiss. They cut to them already in mid-kiss. So it's gone. The emotional weight is gone. They did not trust the audience to care and stick with them for 2 minutes of a kiss lead up. And that is tragic to me.
Well, it's the structure of the film itself is built that way. It never stays too long. It never trusts the scene longer than a minute or two.
It's too bad because, you know, there are elements like, I'm not going to get into sort of like a deconstruction of what, you know, screwball comedy is. And I know that this would be obviously a neo screwball. It's not in the classic screwball era by decades, but, you know, the way that, that sort of like gender roles and kind of sexual dominance is a component of screwball comedy. You know, when Kim Cattrall says, "I like to wear men's clothes," I was like, that right there, if they had played that a little bit, this could have been like a neo screwball comedy. And instead, he just responds with, "Yeah, that's it.
That's it."
And they go out of frame, and I guess they're having sex, and okay. You know, I mean, considering the extent to which they play up like Leslie Easterbrook's kind of masculinity, you know, they could have done that a little bit. And you know what? It's like that would have added a little bit of texture to Steve Guttenberg's character if he kind of dug the fact that she was, you know, dominant or whatever, but nothing. They just don't want to give us any of that depth, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know, it's too bad because they were so. Police Academy endures now because of how successful it was and the nostalgia quality, but it will not be timeless.
No.
In the same way that Airplane will be timeless, or Fast Times at Ridgemont High, or 16 Candles, or Ferris Bueller's Day Off, or whatever, name your favorite 80s comedy. It will be ephemeral. It may take 50 years for it to disappear from consciousness, but it will, you know?
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned 16 Candles, too, because that's one of the films that was released at this very same time that did not beat Police Academy at the box office. Oh,
yeah. And I mean, you know, and also another movie I didn't see in the theater, along with everything else in that era, including Breakfast Club. People are like, dude, you were a movie fan when Breakfast Club was out in the movies? How many times did you see it? And I was like, none.
Breakfast Club didn't become a deal until later on. I really don't feel like that had the same immediate impact at the box office. Maybe I'm misremembering, because I wasn't quite old enough to...
Yeah, I mean, for stuff in the 80s, it was a two-fisted approach. It was the theatrical... three-fisted. Is that a term? Three-fisted?
We can make it a term. Let's coin it. Consider
do you have three fists? I don't know. Maybe in certain types of movies.
It's theoretical. We can have however many fists we want.
But it was theatrical window, VHS, cable. I wrote about Escape from New York recently, which is a movie that is a huge favorite of mine. I wrote about this in my work for getTV, the over-the-air network that broadcasts classic film and TV shows. But what made Escape from New York part of what made it hit as hard as it did for an extended period of time was, it had theatrical success, then it had, home video success, then it had cable, and then it had, I feel like it was, in my mind, the 80s were spent, most of it was spent watching Escape from New York somehow late at night on television. I don't know where I was watching it. It was probably, panned and scanned and probably edited, but I feel like it was on constantly. And since we had fewer outlets back then, this stuff could hit us harder than any one thing hits now, Yeah.
I mean, I had the new release wall in my video store, and I lived in a town that was about 2,000 people. So that was all we had. You walk in, and on the left there was all the new releases. Right. And the way that it's digested now, you're absolutely right. You cannot focus on anything at all. There's so much opportunity and so much valuable content.
And a movie hits for a weekend or a show I don't know what's Stranger Things hits for,
everybody talks about it for
weeks.
A month.
Yeah, a month maybe. And then it's on to the next thing. It's there's so much stuff, and when you factor into that, basically everything is available whenever you want it, you're never going to have the sort of shared, popular cultural touchstones that a movie like Police Academy was,
I feel like that was a terrific conversation. I feel like we hit all the high points and the many low points.
Yeah, it's whatever. It was discursive, but I think it's entertaining. Hopefully,
well, I think that's the best way to go about these conversations. Is that you start with a movie and you hit everything that comes along with it. I did take the opportunity to print out some of my favorite Amazon reviews, because Amazon is a constant source of entertainment when it comes to half-hearted film reviews.
Yeah.
In this case, I feel like they were worthy of the film. So this particular one was a 3-star review from that Alaska guy. He said, "It was funny when I saw it the first couple of times. Period." So he stated that he's watched it enough.
Yeah.
But now I'm not quite there anymore.
Well, I think that's Ebert level criticism right there.
The other one that I liked was, "I bought this as a gag for someone graduating from a police academy. I watched it. It sucks."
I can't say I disagree with that, frankly.
It's just that, it's funny to me that we're still on this level. It's my buddy's, graduating from police academy, so I'm going to give him.
Can I go off the script for a second?
Please.
Since you've seen all of them, right?
Yes, I have.
Would it be safe to assume that the level of quality decreases as they go on? Or is there sort of like do they kind of like reboot it and all of a sudden it gets good again, or no?
No, there's never a true like reboot. If anything, the way they go about the regurgitation becomes more streamlined. The episodic nature of them, where they go character to character, scene to scene, and sometimes they come together, sometimes not, never changes. When 2 and 3, even though you read about them, the critics all like were mixed. So I guess sort of positive about Police Academy when it first came out. But after that, it was always, these are the worst movies ever made. Stop making them, and they still make money. Like,
having not seen past 2, I lack honestly, when we agreed to do this, I had an idea that I was going to watch all 7 of them.
Yeah, when I heard that, I was at once, that is amazing, and don't do that.
Well, no, and I put on 2, and I swear to you, I fell asleep during it. I could not stay awake. So, again, I had to watch 2 at the gym, because the great thing about watching at the gym is that you cannot fall asleep, because if you fall asleep on the treadmill,
it's bad for business.
You will get injured.
Yeah.
And so it helps me focus. I have a little bit of like focus issues. And, so I was able to sort of like, at that point be like, you know what? I can't go any further with this.
They don't get better.
If they don't get better, you know what? I was like, ooh, maybe with Bobcat in, it'll be funny.
It depends on what specific gags you're drawn to as the series goes on, because there's, as with Police Academy 1, there's gags that hit. There's those 1 or 2 per episode,
And there was also, I was surprised maybe not surprised, but I had forgotten. There was also a live action TV series.
Yeah.
Did you watch that?
I did not.
So, because the interesting thing is that all the guys who directed these movies are all sitcom directors, including Jerry Paris, by the way, who is a TV legend who directed, tons of episodes of Dick Van Dyke and, lots of other great, memorable shows. It's interesting that, all the directors that they had on these films are all sitcom directors, because you could make an argument that these are just 90-minute sitcoms, and maybe they should have been that to begin with. So I think about the TV series, and it's sort of fascinating. I wonder if in that format it works better, but it's hard to say because I've never seen it.
Yeah, I was looking to find a way to watch it today as I was going over my notes, and I realized I had never actually seen an episode. I knew it existed, but
maybe they burned all the tapes.
It's possible, because I've never seen. I remember when it came on, and it was. Was it 97? Is that?
Yes, it aired. It was syndicated 97.
Yeah. So. I wasn't watching TV at all. I was in college. I just didn't. I watched movies, and that was pretty much it. So it was just off my radar completely by that point.
Yeah. All right. So I guess I will never be a completist. I will never be a Police Academy completist, and I'm going to have to be okay with that.
Yeah. So the ultimate question, though, are you ready?
Yeah.
Do you feel better now that you've seen Police Academy?
Yes, honestly. As you age, and you'll discover this. I hate to sound like your grandfather, but
you've already done that. You've already outed yourself as my
right.
grandfatherly figure. So continue on down that path.
I'm so youthful, by the way.
It's true. It's true. Home listeners, he is youthful. I don't mean to give McCain prematurely.
Right. No, I'm definitely youthful, but at a certain point, you feel like, all right, I have to be focused. There's life does not go on forever, right? And, you know, it's like whatever, when you're 8 years old, 8-year-old Jay growing up in Pittsburgh, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Michigan.
Michigan. Same difference, whatever.
Yeah.
8-year-old Jay in Michigan is like, oh, this is funny. I can just watch this 5 or 6 or 10 or 100 times.
Pretty much.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, like when Jay's 47, he's going to be like, holy fuck, I'm going to die at some point. And there's so many things I want to watch, and I just cannot waste that valuable time on watching Police Academy again. It's like, this is a sad thing that happens. It's like you lose. People talk about their guilty pleasures. I don't have any guilty pleasures because I've got a fucking list of 1 trillion things that I want to get to.
Yep, I'm there with you. I understand completely because I rarely rewatch movies anymore, and I feel bad about it. And I have these, I have a massive film collection and of these movies that I love, and every time I sit down, I grab one from the unseen pile and pop it in, and then there's, that's the way it goes every time. Yeah. You've got these 2 watch lists that are, I don't even know what my current stack of unwatched movies is, but it's obscene. Like it's unfortunate that I feel oppressed by the movies that I have not watched, but that's what happens. So, so that was the long answer. The short answer to your question is, I'm very glad that I got a chance to not only watch this movie, but to watch it with a somewhat of a critical eye, because frankly, it's like I've never walked out of a movie in my life, never, ever have walked out except one time when I was with a girl and we wanted to go, for whatever. I don't want to offend you or your listeners with, that kind of conversation. But now we need to know what movie.
Honestly, it was Kill Bill.
Kill Bill. 1 or 2?
I think 1. I don't remember. I was distracted.
Right.
But other than that one time, I've never walked out of a movie because you can learn more from bad movies than you can from good. And I say this because I'm a video producer and director, and I've worked on movies. So I'm involved in production. I'm, a writer and whatever. I've done comedy. So all of this is of a piece for me, right? I learn more from watching what Police Academy did wrong than, frankly, I do from watching a great movie and being like, oh, I could never do that. I can't even see the seams in this. I don't understand. It's so good, and I don't know how to make anything even close to this good.
That's
right?
very, very similar to the first advice that I received from my screenwriting professor in college. He's like, read every bad screenplay you can find.
Yep, it's true. It's a great piece of advice from that teacher.
I don't even remember his name. I only remember that introduction to the class.
If you are listening, Jay's unnamed screenwriting teacher from the distant past, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
America thanks you.
I have, before I sign up, I also walked out of one movie. Sadly, it was Cronenberg's Crash.
Oh, yeah.
A friend and I really wanted to go see it, and we made the mistakes of taking our girlfriends at the time, who by the 20-minute mark were threatening to leave us there. Mm-hmm. So after holding them off for about another 20 to 30 minutes, we finally gave up and left. So that is my one walkout story as well.
And that's you get a free pass on that. It's like if you're walking out, and I'm betraying myself to be the same kind of asshole that I think thought Police Academy was funny in '84, but a girl is always a good excuse.
I feel like it was related. Yeah, the same vicinity.
And when I say girl, I mean woman, because right. I'm not like people like, oh, Jay had this fucking like 50-year-old grandfather on the show talking about girls and how movies with cursing are bad, and I'm like, great, I'm ruined forever with this show.
Well, and also grandfatherly fellatio with George
Porky Brewster's father got a blowjob in Police Academy. Yeah. People, why don't more people know this? Should be a thing. It should be a meme. Anyway. Well, this was fun. I hope I did a good job for your first show.
I think it worked out well. I thank you for coming on and legitimizing this endeavor before we devolve into talking about why we haven't watched Titanic or something. God forbid that ever happens. I saw Titanic 3 times in the theater, and I cried all 3 times. So judge away for that, America. Good for you, because I have not seen it, and I can't do it now. It's like...
That was a movie where, and again, I don't want to like ruin my chance of coming back, but that was a movie where you got caught up. You know what? This is somehow you managed to hit on, like, what I got caught up in Titanic. I look back at it now, I'm like, oh, this is cheesy. Like, at the time, I was like, oh my God, this is the best movie ever. I'm crying, I'm weeping, like convulsive. Like when she dances down, all right, I don't want to give it away, but like at the end,
really doesn't
matter.
Oh
my God, that scene at the end, like I was like,
that movie came out, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if it was the same weekend or the weekend next to it, but it was the same as Tomorrow Never Dies. Is that correct? Because I remember coming out. If it wasn't Tomorrow Never Dies, it was another action movie. But the point is, I feel like it was a Bond movie, and I was sitting there. We were in TGI Fridays, all right? And this whole group of people that we knew had come out of Titanic, and were talking about it, and were gushing about it, and telling us how, oh my God, you have to go see it. And I'm like, I'm just based on this conversation, I'm good. And I think that was the end of me ever going to see Titanic. For whatever reason.
It was a movie that was, that captured the zeitgeist of the moment, and it became a sort of like, what do you call it? Like a not self-fulfilling prophecy, but like self-powering engine. It fed upon itself, and everyone who saw it and cried and told their friend, and then another person cried, and then you look back, you're like, wait a minute, she could have totally put him on that board with her. What the fuck is wrong with this movie? And then anyway, but that was of its time. I don't think it's held up as well. I don't think time has been kind to Titanic in the same way that I don't think time has been kind to Police Academy. We've brought it all full.
There it is. There's the connection. I knew that I was going to tell that story for a reason.
All right. Well, thank you for having me on the show. Good luck, America. Thank you for listening. Tip your waitress, and thank your screenwriting professors for telling you to read bad scripts. They're right.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. Thank you very much for making an appearance and chatting with me.
My pleasure. We'll do it again.
Oh, please do.
Could we have the lights turned down? Now, this first slide shows a very, very interesting thing. Our main building. In slide 2, we see another view of it. Oh, my God, you wouldn't believe it. Let us look at this slide for a moment without comment. I think it speaks for itself.
Cinema Shame lives on the web at cinemashame.wordpress.com. Join the growing legions of penitent movie watchers today.